as we get up with you, starting right now. On a Monday from New York, I am Greeny, delighted you've chosen to get up with us and look at the superstar squad we have put together to talk football with you as the morning goes today. Dominique is ready. Jeff Darlington is here. Teddy Bruschi making plays today, and Ryan Clark will join the party as well. But we begin with the magical words. Game 7 in the NBA, Mavericks Clippers for the 28, plus the 10 boards, the 9 assists. Clippers make 23s, and they advance 126-111. They will take on Utah in round 2, and right now, our friends at Caesars Sportsbook see the Jazz as slight favorites. Currently minus 145, the Clippers are plus 125. However, our analytics love Utah, giving the Jazz a 70% chance to make the Western Conference Finals. That was one game yesterday. How about the other? From Game 7 to Game 1. Joel Embiid back in the lineup with the torn meniscus. 39, a postseason career high from Joel Embiid. So that's where we stand after one game in that series. And here is where we begin our conversation with Tim Legler this morning. So they get Embiid back. He plays huge, and they still lose at home. Is the 1 seed in the East in trouble in this series?
They're definitely in trouble. That doesn't mean they can't win the series, but when you have Joel Embiid play in the first game and play with 100% ability to move and get off the ground and have a normal Joel Embiid night, and you still lose, it's a major concern, and here's why. I think Philadelphia is one of, if not the best perimeter defensive team in the NBA. They've got more personnel to throw at Trae Young than any other team when you talk about the guard position, and yet they could not contain him the entire game, particularly the way he got out of the gate. It's a massive problem for Doc Rivers, but here's what I think the solution is going to be, Greeny. I think they need to start Matisse Thybulle and let Matisse Thybulle have Trae Young the entire time he's on the floor. And if Trae Young gives the ball up, you've got to face guard and deny and take him out of the game and not let him get the basketball back to the extent that you can. Great players are still going to make plays and have an impact. But Trae Young got into a comfort zone at the start of this game. And when he does that, he puts so much pressure on your defense, similar to a Curry or a Damian Lillard, because of where you have to guard him. So I think the answer is change the matchup. You have to have more minutes with Thybulle on him. If that means you start him and Danny Green comes off the bench, so be it. Because Danny Green had absolutely no answer for Trae Young, and that's going to be the key to the series. So I think Philadelphia will still and can still win the series, but there's no doubt the level of concern has been significantly raised.
All right, so the Nets and the Hawks have one-game leads in the East. Out west, with the Lakers out and the Clippers advancing, round 2 begins tonight. In your mind, right now, who is the team to beat in the Western Conference?
I don't hedge, Greeny, but I'm telling you right now, it's a toss-up. I could sit here and make a great argument for any 4 of these teams. I don't think necessarily it's the Clippers. I think people are going to now go there because of the talent with Kawhi and Paul George, and they got by a Dallas team. Here's the thing. Dallas is a team that's got some serious limitations. They're not a very good defensive team. They don't have a lot of answers in terms of offense creation outside of Luka Doncic. So for the Clippers to take 7 games to get by a flawed Dallas Mavericks team, even with a superstar on it, I think people are going to start to get a little bit ahead of themselves when you start to take a look at the rest of the West. Are you going to forget what you watched all year out of the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns? I do not think it's clear cut. And if I had to go lay money on it today, I had actually probably would split it between Utah and Phoenix. I think those 2 teams have been the best teams in the Western Conference for a reason. They're the 1 and 2 seeds. They don't really have holes, and I think they've gotten a lot more confidence with what they had to go through in the first round. And I think either of those teams right now, a little bit more complete than what you're going to get out of the Clippers. So even though Kawhi Leonard can win a game, win a series practically by himself, and if he goes into that autopilot mode the way he did at the end of this series or the way he did when he led Toronto to a championship, the Clippers will be in the finals, but I do not think by any means it's a foregone conclusion.
All right, we will see. Phoenix and Denver get it started tonight. Timmy Legg, stay close. We'll come back to you a little bit later. Meantime, this weekend we were waiting for it, and it finally did. The shoe has dropped on Julio Jones. Our Diana Rossini reporting the Falcons expected to trade Julio to the Titans. A few hours later, that deal got done. The Titans sending a 2022 second-round pick and a 2023 fourth-round pick to the Falcons for Julio and a 6th-rounder. Ryan Tannehill, your thoughts?
I'm excited. I'm fired up. You know, it's been a been a little bit up and down. Didn't know if it was going to happen or not. Excited to bring Julio on board. To pair him across from AJ on the other side, it's a really dynamic duo for our side receivers. So looking forward to what he can bring to the table. Obviously, a lot of work in front of us. Gonna have to feel each other out and get on the same page.
I know what you're wondering. You're wondering, what did Vegas think of the trade? The answer is Vegas liked the trade. Their odds to win the Super Bowl at Caesars Sportsbook jumped dramatically. They went from 35-1 to 30-1 with the addition of the 32-year-old superstar. And speaking of superstars, our squad is ready to go today. Here we go. Dominique, Jeff Darlington, and Teddy Bruschi. I will start with you. We're now looking at offense that has Derrick Henry on it and has A.J. Brown on it and now has Julio Jones on it. What are the Tennessee Titans, in your opinion, as of this morning?
Oh, the Tennessee Titans are a vastly improved team. I say that because Julio Jones just accentuates who they are. I mean, this is a team that has to win the physical battle. I mean, they have to win the line of scrimmage. They have to break tackles. And Julio Jones is a player that's going to complement that, because to stop Derrick Henry, you need 7-8 guys in the box, and that's when Julio Jones will find his value off of the play action pass. Now, this isn't a team that's going to win a championship scoring 35 points a game or anything like that. It's about, can they establish who they are every single game against those upper echelon teams when they eventually play them. So can they beat up on the Chiefs? Can they beat up on the Bills and play that slugfest with the Ravens? This is something that helps that, because blocking and tackling. A.J. Brown's one of the toughest in the league to tackle. Everybody knows Derrick Henry is. Julio Jones, I believe, complements that. But I think this is a team that'll be highly competitive in the AFC.
All right, so Dominique, you're a corner, and I'm just envisioning they break the huddle, and Julio Jones runs to one side, and A.J. Brown runs to the other. What do?
I'm not a corner anymore. I'm a talking head on TV, and thank the Lord above that I am considering what the Tennessee Titans have out there. So I agreed with everything Teddy said, except for the conclusion that he got to, is I don't think that they're vastly better, because I think, frankly, Julio's going to fill in for what Corey Davis did last year. And I know Julio Jones at his peak is much better than Corey Davis was, but Corey Davis was really good. And this team has just become more of who they are, because last year they were one of the best teams, I think the best team in the league on first down. And I think that's what Julio brings to them, is more threats on first down, because you can't load the box, like Teddy was alluding to stop the run against Henry if you're going to have one-on-one matchups on either side with both of those receivers. So I think the big questions for this team on the defensive side of the ball, Julio Jones doesn't do anything to help them there, and losing Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, who's now the head coach in Atlanta. I think all these things kind of end up, to me, with the Titans just kind of being the same as they were last year.
And Jeff, let me come to you then.
If you're saying they're the same, I mean, okay. They establish within a game that they are beating you at the line of scrimmage, and then so you even have to commit to that even more, is what I'm saying, Neek. And then there's a Julio Jones option after that, above a Corey Davis option after that. And if you get healthy, Julio, because we all know if he's going to be on the field and going to be able to stay there, that's where the impact comes, when the ball's in his hand and he breaks another tackle. Because, I mean, that's what makes them scary, not in terms of scoring points, but, man, I got to tackle this guy all day. Not only A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, but now, wait a second, I got to tackle Julio Jones too. And that's the exact attitude Vrabel's going to try to create with this team. It's just about establishing that.
Right. Well, Julio's going to have to learn how to rush the passer or something, because that's what they really need. Someone to rush the passer, and Caleb Farley is the guy that they drafted to replace the corner. He has a really ugly injury history, and on the other side is Janoris Jenkins. So I agree with you, up until the point where you say they're not going to have to score 35 points a game. They might have to. Honestly, they might have to score 35 points a game. Poor Jeff. You don't get to say anything, bud. Sorry.
Well, they may be capable of scoring 35 points a game now with that array of weapons. Certainly the names on the backs of the jerseys, all the fans are well aware of. Jeff, what'd you hear from people around the league after the deal got done?
Well, what's especially interesting here, Greeny, is that they gave up a second-round pick, and there really didn't turn out to be a bidding war for Julio Jones' services. Now, you can say whatever you want about that. Does that mean that he was not as coveted around the league as maybe we thought he would be? Heck, Randy Moss back in 2005 or 2007 went to the Patriots for a fourth-round pick. We know how that turned out. But this was a situation where, the Ravens were interested, the Rams were interested. There were interested parties, but no team was willing to give up a second-round pick and also take on Julio Jones' contract. But to the Titans, this is not as much of a luxury as it is a necessity because of the conversation we just had about Corey Davis and his impact last year. The Titans know if they want to stay at the top of the AFC, where they've kind of been inching toward, they needed to get a wide receiver to complement AJ.
Well, will Julio make us remember the Titans? That's the first question of the day. We have a lot more still to come, and many of them will be about Aaron Rodgers. Tomorrow is a significant day in the development of the Aaron Rodgers saga. It is the first of 3 consecutive days of Packers mandatory minicamp. In his monthly column, Packers president Mark Murphy had this to say regarding the impact of the predicament. Quote, "The situation we face with Aaron Rodgers has divided our fan base. The emails and letters that I've received reflect this fact. As I wrote here last month, we remain committed to resolving things with Aaron, want him to be our quarterback in 2021 and beyond. We are working to resolve the situation and realize that the less both sides say publicly, the better." He said that, again, Dominique Foxworth, in his monthly column. So what question immediately jumps to your mind?
A, why the hell does Mark Murphy have a monthly column? Like, who cares? And also, I mean, can we do a FOIA request on his emails? Because I'm pretty sure that there is nobody emailing him angry about Aaron Rodgers. There is no divide. There's no fans who are like, we don't want Aaron back. Like, he's trying to create this this friction that doesn't exist. And it seems like maybe it's not intentional, but it feels kind of intentional, like he's trying to vilify Aaron Rodgers in this situation. And maybe Aaron deserves it, but it's a weird thing to do because it seems so obvious where he's saying he's dividing our fan base. Calling someone divisive is not a compliment. And suggesting that there is anyone within 1,000 miles of Green Bay, Wisconsin that roots for the Packers that doesn't want Aaron Rodgers back, suggesting that to me sounds absurd. I need to see these emails and letters immediately.
Teddy.
Yeah, the only thing with that, Neek, is people are starting to point fingers. And I think that's what he's talking about in terms of, I mean, there are Packers fans and there are generational, I mean, this is a generational player that's been 10, 15 years. So you got kids that grew up that all they know is Aaron Rodgers, so they want to blame the organization. And then there are the fans that are 40, 50 years old that have seen a lot of quarterbacks before Aaron Rodgers that are blaming Aaron Rodgers. And that's just the natural thing to happen because here in New England, there are still people that think Tom Brady should be here. And they will point blame at Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft. And then also people look at Tom Brady and say he chose to leave. So the blame game is starting in Green Bay, which is what I'm trying to say. And people will look at Aaron and say, man, I can't believe you left us like that. And then others will say, man, I can't believe you drafted a quarterback to make the Aaron Rodgers leave. So there's the conflict that all the Green Bay Packers fans are going to start to experience once it sets into them that Aaron Rodgers probably isn't going to come back.
And Jeff Darlington, why is tomorrow a huge critical day in all of this?
Well, first of all, the fact that Aaron Rodgers, the coaching staff, nobody in Green Bay expects him to show up for OTAs. And by the way, that's not that big of a deal. The fine for this is $93,000. Not until training camp do those fines start to increase and feel like more of a deadline. But quickly back to this Mark Murphy newsletter Q&A thing that Meek so eloquently criticized. A little more context to this. This was a question and answer column. And in the column, Mark Murphy was asked by a fan. The question from the fan actually wasn't even really a question. It says, "Dear Mark, you have done a great job. Don't let the critics drag you down. Washington needs a new name. I suggest the Generals." Like, I don't even know what that question was exactly. That is the question where Mark Murphy then unsolicited says that we realize that the less both sides say publicly, the better. The question wasn't even about Aaron Rodgers. Like, it doesn't even make sense. What is he talking about?
I understand why Aaron is annoyed with all this because on top of that, it feels like he's talking directly to Aaron. Because if he wants Matt LaFleur to stop talking or he wants Brian Gutekunst, who hasn't said much, to stop talking, you just got to walk down the hall. Making this public statement feels again like they're telling Aaron Rodgers what to do. And whether you side with Aaron Rodgers or not, I understand. Like Teddy makes a great point where people might be choosing sides on who to blame, but nobody's choosing sides on who they want. If you give any of the 50 to 70-year-old guy in the fan base, like, we could keep Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst, or we could get Aaron Rodgers. Everybody knows what side they're on when it comes to that.
Go ahead, Teddy.
Yeah, and Murphy and Gutekunst will make it clear in every comment that they make that they want Aaron back, that he's their quarterback, that they're doing everything they possibly can to bring him back. They have to do this because it makes it look like they're giving effort to bring him back. But they didn't think about all this with some of the actions they took in the last couple years. So still, it's going to be, how do we look to people when we say things?
And I think I would just go back quickly to what Jeff said, because I think it is ironic to point out that Mark Murphy wrote in his newsletter that we realize the less both sides say publicly, the better. He wrote that publicly in a newsletter unsolicited. So he is not following his own advice, it does not seem. That said, Dominique, does this thing, when Rodgers doesn't show up tomorrow, does it change anything about what you expect to happen in the long run?
It doesn't change anything, but I think it's hard to predict what Aaron Rodgers would do. He's a unique guy. So, I'm of a mind, if you catch me at the right time, where I think Aaron Rodgers would be willing to sit out this season and then try to force their hand next year. And then I also kind of think Aaron Rodgers wouldn't want this on his resume because he seems like a sensitive type of guy, and he doesn't want to be criticized for that. So it's hard for me to predict what's going to happen with a player like Aaron Rodgers, but I can guarantee you that up until week 1, it won't be pretty.
All right, I have much more on this as we continue, guys. Let me take a short break on that thought. Coming up, more football as we go. Are Baker and the Browns Super Bowl contenders? Why one member of our crew is slamming the brakes on this Cleveland run. You'll hear why. And the Nets win Game 1 without James Harden. Can they win this series if he can't go? Jay will answer. Let's run the floor. Yesterday's NBA action. Game 7, Mavs and Clippers. Can't blame Luka. Doncic was spectacular, 46 points, 14 assists, but not enough. Kawhi Leonard, 1 assist shy of a triple-double. LA wins 126-111. The Clippers and Jazz will begin their next series tomorrow night. In Philly, Trae Young had 35 points. Hawks held on to beat the Sixers by 4 in Game 1 in that second-round series. Atlanta nearly blowing a 25-point third-quarter lead. Joel Embiid, playing with a torn meniscus in his knee, had 39 for the Sixers. And James Harden will miss tonight's Game 2 against the Bucks with what is described as right hamstring tightness. Harden was hurt in the first minute of the Nets' victory on Saturday night in the regular season. He missed over a month with a right hamstring strain. So, Jay Williams, KJZ, ESPN Radio, if James Harden is not able to be a factor in this series, let's just sort of spin
in the
it
whole
that
series
way, however that may go.
Okay.
Who wins?
I might have to go with the Bucks. I think the Bucks will win Game 2. I don't see them shooting 20% from the three-point line. And look, if this was a series where you're asking me, hey, who has more offensive firepower? If KD, James Harden, and Kyrie are healthy against the Bucks, I take the Nets all day long. But not having James Harden on the floor as a facilitator then makes Kyrie Irving a facilitator to a degree. Kyrie Irving can handle that, but I still think defensively they will be able to clamp down in a matter of time. Plus, with the way the Bucks can shoot, and it kills me to say this, Gritty, because you know I'm a Nets fan. I just think that the Bucks will find a way to clamp down defensively on the likes of KD and Kyrie.
So, to be clear, and that's where I wanted to set this thing up, at the risk of depressing you, Harden is critical. What you're telling us is Harden is the difference between the Nets advancing and not.
Yeah, especially in this series because he's a guy that offensively, there's nobody that can guard him. Now, when the Bucks lost Dante Vincenzo, you're saying that's a huge loss for the Bucks from a defensive perspective, right? Because now you have to have 3 guys that can guard these guys. Not having that, now you take off James Harden, a guy who gave you double-digit assists almost every single game, Greeny. It's a huge loss for Brooklyn. You still have KD and Kyrie, but I think the Bucks have enough defensively to scheme to win this series.
All right, we'll see. So they will play that Game 2 tonight. In the meantime,
without James Harden, if James Harden doesn't come back.
Right. So let me go to one other thing here. The Mavericks, their season comes to an end yesterday. Luka Doncic has, by the numbers, one of the great playoff series in the history of the sport in a losing effort. If I were to say to you, at the age of 22, right now, that guy is the best offensive player in the world. Right now, what would you say to me?
I would still say the best offensive player in the world is Kevin Durant, but he is right there. If Kevin Durant's 1A, Luka's 1B. Because what you saw him do last night and what he's done throughout this whole series is incredibly special. He's gifted. Now, the real question comes into Greeny, what do the Mavericks do around him offensively? Because Porzingis is not it.
You know, it's funny, a lot of people said that Tim Hardaway Jr. was the throw-in part of the package when the Knicks made that trade. You can make an argument now that, no, that was actually Kristaps Porzingis was the throw-in part of that trade. And Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to get paid. So, yes, Luka is special, but you can also make an argument going back to when they had this, is it Luka or Trae Young? Look at the way Atlanta has built around Trae Young. Look where Trae Young is in the playoffs as seeming what Dallas needs to do around Luka. Atlanta's built around Trae Young way better than Dallas has around Luka.
That's fair, and it's probably right. But let's just sort of finish it with this. For those who aren't following it, just put into perspective how good Luka Doncic is. Again, 35-10 for a 7-game series. Put into perspective how good he is.
Look at this face. Look at this. This is the face of the NBA moving forward. Mark this down. This is the face of the NBA moving forward. This is how special of a talent that the NBA has. There's a reason why LeBron James wanted to sign Luka to his first signature shoe. LeBron James sees it. The rest of the world sees it. But I think now we get a chance to see it on Broadway, even though he couldn't get over the hump the first round. But he is a differentiator as it relates to every NBA player in the game currently.
And I mentioned one more time, he's 22.
22 years old.
All right, Jay Will, KJZ, every weekday morning, coast to coast on ESPN Radio. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Luka pass. Pocket pass.
Meanwhile, the NBA playoffs roll on with 2 conference semifinals. Thursday night, we'll have them on ESPN. Game 3, Nets-Bucks is 7:30 Eastern, then 10 Eastern. Jazz-Clippers Game 2. Countdown crew will start your night at 7 Eastern. It's all here on ESPN. Meanwhile, back to the NFL, and it's time for Teddy, Set, Go with Teddy Bruschi. Here we go. Teddy, first question.
All right.
Julio Jones. Does he make the Titans the scariest offense in the AFC?
A part of me says yes, and here's why. Because this is already one of the most physical units in the league, and you added another physical receiver. Defensively, I got to worry about Derrick Henry and stopping the run all day long. They're going to try to impose their will upon me, and Julio Jones is just that receiver that can complement that off of play action. So they're going to score 30 or 40 on you, no, but they can beat you up, and that can make you scary.
Next, I want to talk about another AFC contender, Baltimore. They say Lamar Jackson's going to get a lot more snaps from under center. What does that mean, Teddy?
Man, Green, just giving you the linebacker perspective, it just makes this offense more dangerous. And why I say that is because the play action game is just more realistic when you're under center. It takes longer to make the fakes. The quarterback's back is to you. I have to buy what you're selling. And that's what makes it tough. If Lamar is able to be deceptive and make this run pass look identical, this could be a huge, small element that can help them win a lot of football games.
And then finally, in that same division, everybody talking about the Browns. How do you see them entering 2021?
Yeah, everybody's been talking about the Browns for a long time in terms of who they end up signing, the roster that they have, and really who they are on paper. Are they just going to be another team that goes 11-5 again, gets bounced in the playoff and can't make it happen when the game's on the line, when the championships are on the line? That's something I'm still trying to figure out about this Cleveland Brown team, because we're talking about winning championships, not just making the playoffs. I hope that's the way they're thinking, and there are next levels in terms of mental progression your head coach and your quarterback have to take.
Yeah, you can call it on paper. You can say, look at the names on the backs of the jerseys, one way or the other. The talent is clearly there. So, Dominique, if I were to say to you, if Baker Mayfield takes the next step, and that's a big step for a quarterback to take, that is the difference between the Browns being a Super Bowl team or not. Is that oversimplifying it, or would you buy it?
It's probably oversimplifying it, but I would still buy it because the quarterback is the most important position. And if a quarterback can take a leap, because Baker is a slightly above average quarterback, if he can take the step from that to great quarterback, then that covers up a lot of other shortcomings that you have. You don't have to rely on the running game, or that offensive line that they have is really good nearly as much. And you take pressure off the defense, which has gotten better. The additions that they made this offseason to that defense, yes, a lot of it's on paper, but they're proven guys. John Johnson may be the best safety in the NFL. He's now on their team. Same is true of Troy Hill, who's going to be playing nickel. And then they went and got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to play linebacker, and they addressed the pass rush by adding Clowney to go opposite Garrett. This team, again, like Teddy said, they're loaded on paper, but the most important thing for any team in this league is that quarterback spot. So if you can count on Baker to make 5 to 10 big plays in playoff games regularly, yes, they're a Super Bowl contender.
Jeff Darlington, thoughts on the Browns?
Look, I kind of where Teddy is at. And here's the thing, like the second you criticize the Browns in any capacity, they'll come at you, meaning the fan base, to say like, no, look at us. Like, look what we did last year against the Steelers. But I'm not just talking about the division. We're talking about being the cream of the crop in the NFL. Like, getting out of the division is going to be difficult in its own right. You've got two teams in the Steelers and the Ravens that feel like they could definitely compete with the Browns for the division, and a team in the Bengals that's starting to rise with Burrow. We'll see about them. But, like, the point there is, like, they're going to eat each other alive within the own division. Can they then get out of that and handle the Chiefs, the Titans, the Bills? Like, that to me feels like a challenge that, to Nick's point, it's going to require Baker Mayfield being more of an elite quarterback than he has shown so far. So,
I mean,
to me,
in defense, in defense of the Browns fans, I think they would also point to that Kansas City Chiefs playoff game. Even though they lost it, I think they would point to that and say that, yes, they can play with the big dogs. If it weren't for like a bad call from the referee, they feel like they would have won that game.
Teddy looks skeptical. Why?
Because Nick brings up a great point on their defense. Love it, love everything they've done. A lot of moves to talk about, but I disagree with Darlington too and Nick in terms of I really don't want Baker to be elite. Right. I don't think he has to be elite for this team to win. The progression I'm talking about in terms of the quarterback position with Baker is realizing to stay out of the way sometimes. Can he do that? Does he want to press and show how good he is? That's when you take risks and throw interceptions and you don't make good decisions and you put more pressure on yourself. I'm saying this roster's so good, Baker just needs to be good sometimes. And sometimes it takes a young player like this, not that you can't realize that because it's like, man, everyone's looking to me now and I got to throw for 5,000. I got to have 4 touchdowns. That's not the way championship football happens sometimes in terms of progression of a quarterback. And not only his play, but mentality and leadership. That's what I'm talking about.
It's an interesting thought for a guy who was the first pick in the draft and waiting for the next or his first real big contract. Let me leave that there, but we will come back to it. Here we go. It is time for me to ask a series of hard-hitting, provocative questions to that man, Dominique Foxworth, who has to answer them whether he wants to or not. And speaking of whether you want to or not, Chad Johnson fighting and doing a pretty good job on the undercard last night of the Mayweather-Logan Paul affair. So here's the question. How many rounds could you go with Chad Johnson?
0. Like, I don't fight. It's been a long time since I've done anything physical, and I also do not have the desire to fight anybody. I'm good on that. There's not, well, maybe there is enough money, but the amount of money they are paying is not enough for me to go endure any more subconcussive episodes in my life. I'm good on that, unless you want to fight, Greeny. You're the only one I'll step in there against. We're about the same height, about the same weight. We can jab it out. That's about it, though.
But I think the similarities in there, Dominique. I too will take a pass on that.
We can string it along. We can string it along for a few rounds, not hurt each other, and get that check, Greeny. Let's make this happen.
Seriously. Or we could just battle it out over a chessboard or something like that. Seems a lot safer to me. All right, back to the NFL. Give me a surprise team for 2021 that you like that no one's talking about.
I like the Saints. Like, they still have Sean Payton, and I understand Jameis Winston has a lot of problems, but he also has a lot going well for him. Right now, we're looking at possibly Taysom Hill being the starting quarterback. But if Sean Payton can get past that, they still have a ton of weapons to throw to. Excuse me, they have a ton of weapons on defense. They don't have that many weapons on offense, but the weapons they have are dynamic and an outstanding offensive line. I think if Jameis Winston becomes the starter and Sean Payton's able to work the same magic that he did with Drew Brees, then this team could surprise people down there against Tampa Bay.
I like that.
The way Wade had retired, but apparently this D-Wade 2.0.
Have a big year. Finally, taking your favorite player of all time, Dak Prescott, out of the conversation. Who is the most important person to the Dallas Cowboys' success this season?
Yeah, most important other than Cousin Dak, I think is not a player. I think it's Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator, because this defense has held this team back for a couple of years. And maybe it's been the talent out there, maybe it's been the coaching out there, but it doesn't matter. If they can get to middle of the pack and their offense can keep producing at a level that it was producing last year and the year before when Dak was healthy,
there, of course. She
this is a
withdrew from the tournament
legitimate
after her
competitor in their division. But the big question is, can they get that defense to at least mediocre? If they can get to like 16 in the league, if they can get to 10 in the league, They're a real serious team.
Here's
as long as
how
that
things-
offense keeps putting up the numbers that we know it's capable of putting up.
Okay, let me bring Teddy Bruschi. If changing the coach,
This is going to be fun.
That defense up to 10 in the league, then every football coach everywhere is underpaid. I keep hearing Dan Quinn is good. So if that happens, then Teddy, you just follow this with me. Either Dan Quinn is the greatest defensive coach of all time, or Mike Nolan is the worst defensive coach of all time, because that defense was unwatchable last year. Teddy, help me understand this.
True. In terms, I love what Foxworth is talking about. I agree 100% that he is so valuable to that team because Greenberg, sometimes you just need a fresh voice. You need a fresh voice that has something new for you, simplification of the scheme. Anything like that makes you a new player. It gives you a fresh outlook on things. So that's how valuable it is to get a new voice in there. And if Dan Quinn does a good job, let's just get them in the right positions to where they can adjust to across the ball motion, shifts, everything like that, because communication was such a big problem for them last year, especially down in the red area. So that type of impact and that type of different voice can have a huge difference in terms of how good you are defensively. You get the great young kid at linebacker also coming in from Penn State, I believe it is, the Parsons kid, but still. Yep. Quinn, he can get this done if there is a fresh voice, because players, sometimes they're not as bad as they look when they're just unmotivated.
Micah Parsons, who was drafted out of Penn State, many people think was the best defensive player in the whole draft. Jeff Darlington, what do you think?
Well, look, I mean, I understand completely why the defense is so critical to the success this year. You posed the question to Dominique, which player is most important behind Dak Prescott? I was inclined to pick a defensive player there. I didn't realize you could just cheat and pick the defensive coordinator and throw the whole question out. But that sounds like a Mark Murphy move with the Packers. But let's move on from that. Ezekiel Elliott, by the way, is one of the higher paid guys on the roster. You know, $9 million this year, $12 million next year. Like, they need more production out of him. He only had 3 explosive plays, according to our guy Hembo last season. This is a guy who needs to step up and probably will with a healthier offensive line and a healthy Dak Prescott. But they need that offensive firepower from a guy that they've invested a lot of money in.
All right, I want to come back and talk about Zeke a little more as we go. I need to get to a few other things here because it was such an incredibly busy weekend, but we will come back to this. Since 111, they advance to face Utah in the next round. And our friends at Caesars Sportsbook see the Jazz as slight favorites. They're currently minus 145. Our analytics, however, love Utah, giving the Jazz a 70% chance of making it to the Western Finals. Earlier, we go from Game 7 to Game 1 in the East, and Joel Embiid was Trae Young and the Hawks stealing home court advantage. And so as I bring Tim Legler into the conversation here, you know, the Sixers got what they wanted. They got Embiid back. He played great. Are the Hawks now, in your mind, the team to beat in this series? Do you give them the advantage right now?
I don't know that I would go that far, but I will say I think it's a significant wake-up call for Philadelphia. I don't think Philadelphia thought that they were going to have to make the type of adjustments that they're going to have to make now going forward, because they've got such great defensive perimeter personnel. And when you go up against a Trae Young, it's going to take that. You need guys that have lateral speed. They've got to have length because of the distances that he's covering. You've got to have guys that have some relentlessness, and they've got 3 of them that are pretty good in that category. Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green, all 3. So I think Doc Rivers coming into this was probably very focused on getting Embiid back, making sure their offense is going to run smoothly, and for the most part it did. He looked sensational. But the other end of the floor was an absolute nightmare for them in the first half. Trae Young came out, got into a rhythm. He didn't get touched very much. He was able to go where he wanted to with the basketball. I don't think they were as prepared and their senses heightened enough for what they were going to deal with. This guy can dismantle defenses, and that's what he did, and he got into a rhythm early. Now, they've got to make serious adjustments with how they prioritize Trae Young at the start of Game 2. So I don't know that I'd say Atlanta now is the favorite to win this series, but I think it certainly shows you this is going to be a long, hard fight for Philly.
All right, well, ultimately, the winner will get the winner of Bucks-Nets. Brooklyn will go without James Harden tonight. Let me ask you the question this way. If Harden is not able, because of the hamstring, to be a significant factor in the series, who wins?
I still think the Nets win the series, but I think now you're looking, eye to eye. Now it's more of a toss-up, and the Nets just have a game in hand. That's why I would probably favor them going forward. Because you have Kevin Durant, you have Kyrie Irving. So the offensive dynamic is going to change if James Harden's not out there, because now Kyrie Irving is going to be the main plate setter. And that's not the way they've been playing. So that's going to be different. But I just have so much faith in the greatness of Kevin Durant. And I think he's got an answer for whatever you throw at him. He's done it throughout his career. The question is, can he now dial it to a place where we saw him in Oklahoma City, where we saw him in Golden State at his best? It's been a while since we've seen that Kevin Durant. And as efficient as he's been in this team, we haven't seen him have to put him on his back and get them through tough moments. Let's see if he can do that. I believe he can. And I still think Milwaukee is going to have some problems in one-possession games with how they're going to get offense at critical times, based on who they go to. Because I think it's going to be Middleton or Holiday. I'm not sure they're still not married to Giannis in those situations. And I think that could be problematic for them. So I still think the Nets are in good shape, even without Harden.
Imagine being able to overcome the loss of James Harden and still be the favorite to win a playoff series. Timmy Legs, outstanding. We'll talk to you as the week goes on. But the huge news came yesterday, not just from the NBA, but also from the NFL. Our Diana Rossini reported the Falcons were expected to trade Julio Jones to the Titans, and then a few hours later the deal was done. Tennessee sending a second-rounder in 22 and a fourth-rounder in 23 for Julio and a sixth-round pick. And what does Vegas think of the deal? Well, I'm glad you asked. After they acquired Julio, the Titans' odds at Caesars Sportsbook jumped dramatically from 35-1 to 30-1. So Vegas likes the deal. A.J. Brown likes the deal, saying, quote, having another dominant guy on the other side, everybody has to be honest. Now you don't know who's going to hold who. I may get CB1 or Julio may get CB1, but whoever gets CB2 is going to be in trouble. It's going to be fun. And it's always fun when we can bring Ryan Clark into the conversation. He joins the party here this morning. And so, RC, the old expression, like, who do you send off the bus first? That's like an old high school football thing, like the biggest, most imposing-looking guy. Well, they got A.J. Brown, they got Julio Jones, they got Derrick Henry. They got the most imposing-looking bus in the history of football. Yeah. What are these Titans now?
Well, they got the most imposing-looking offensive bus. Let's not forget that they can't stop people yet. But when you think about what this team can do from an offensive standpoint, one, they absolutely scare you physically, right? If you're a DB, if you're a safety, if you're a nickelback, and you understand the type of physicality that you'll be facing from this offense, you already know that Friday is going to have to be no shirt Friday, and you're going to have to get the curls for the girls and get some triceps done so you can see yourself look swole in the mirror, just so you walk into the stadium with some confidence. But then it comes the actual play on the field. Like, who do you double? Where do you send the safety to? How many people do you have in the box to stop Derrick Henry? You thought this team was prolific and Ryan Tannehill was prolific in play action pass before. This just takes it to another level. This will be a team that will be difficult to scheme, but impossible to truly stop. And this is a huge move. But is this team a receiver away from a Super Bowl? I'm just not sure.
Well, so let's analyze that a little more, Teddy. Now you're going out there. You break the huddle and you're walking out and you're looking, and they've got Derrick Henry behind the quarterback and they have those two guys on the outside. What are you thinking as you're walking up to the line of scrimmage?
You want to get off the field as quick as possible. I'll tell you that, because in terms of tackling, that's what your coach is going to stress all week, is tackling, because those are three of the toughest tackles in the league. I mean, A.J. Brown is one of the toughest receivers in the league to tackle, period. And then Derrick Henry, you add another physical beast in Julio Jones. And off of what RC said, this defense, as much as you think that it's the weak link, this makes them better in terms of if Julio is able to make an explosive play or two to keep the chains moving. I mean, that time of possession is a weapon that the Tennessee Titans know they have to have in their back pocket in terms of keeping that subpar defense off the field. So a defense now realizes, okay, we just got to make one or two plays a game, get us a couple turnovers and get it back to our offense because they're eating up the clock. That's how this team can be successful and compete to be one of the upper echelon teams in the AFC, but it has to be complementary. That defense, they can't be stopping people on the field all day long. And the offense, 3 and outs, that's as bad as it gets for them. So eating up the time of possession, and that's how the defense will succeed.
Well, Nick, I mean, you know how it is. People will look at the name. Julio Jones is a much bigger name than Corey Davis is, and rightly so. Over the course of his career, he's been unbelievable. So they will look at this and they will say, the Titans are now a legit Super Bowl contender. When they say that, Dominique, what will you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to go back to Ryan's point. They brought in Bud Dupree, who I think is a decent pass rusher, but it doesn't change their pass rush, and they're going to be relying on Caleb Farley, who has a really ugly injury history and is a rookie this year, to be a true number one corner across from Janoris Jenkins, who is as good as any corner in the league when he's playing well, but is also a problem at times. So I think that would be where my concern is. And if I'm walking up to the line of scrimmage on first downs from a defensive perspective, what I'm going to say is to guys like Teddy is y'all gonna have to stop the run with 6, because I'm gonna need both of these safeties over top of these here receivers. So I'm sorry, Mr. Brewski, it's gonna be a long day for you in the box, but 6 yards, 7 yards, 10 yards is a lot different than 60 or 50. So I'm gonna need you to bow up a little bit, do them extra curls on Friday, put some Vaseline on, hold your breath so you look good, and take care of business in the box.
Get a horse collar.
I need RC. I need RC over me. I don't need RC down there with you.
Go ahead, Teddy.
That conversation continues. It's like, but wait a second. How about Derrick Henry? We got this beast back there in the backfield. I need that safety. I need the 8th player. So there's a big discussion on Wednesdays about who gets the help.
I mean, you like 250, and so is A.J. Brown. So why don't you come out there and tell him that? I'll get in the box and deal with Derrick Henry.
RC, you're the safety. Where do you want to be?
Stiff arm? I don't want this stiff arm by myself. Derrick Henry, shoot, come up here, strong safety.
Hey, Greeny, I want to be wherever the guys need me, because in truth, I got the easy job. If I slide down into the box, I'm the unblocked guy, and they ain't gonna never put me one-on-one with AJ or Julio, so I'm only providing help. And what I do know as well is, if we do get bombed on, I know how to peel off and have Dominique being the only guy chasing him on the screen and not myself. And then when I run over to Dom, I'm gonna point at him like he's the one that's wrong, but I'm gonna be apologizing. My bad, Dom. I was supposed to be over the top. I was supposed to have you. That's on me. That's a vet move. Everybody's gonna be like, well, obviously. And then Greeny, you gonna come on Monday morning. Here's Ryan Clark fussing at Dominique Foxworth, even though he has 7 degrees, he must not be smart enough to cover Julio Jones. And then when I get to the game, I'll be like, I don't know. I don't tell people what the defense is.
This right here, this is a legit defensive meeting right here.
We all got to do better. As a post-game press conference, man, we all got to do better. That's it.
We got to do better.
I need to figure out if anyone really wants to be the unblocked guy when Derrick Henry has the ball. We'll talk about that as we continue here. In the meantime, much more in this.
Get in the gym, bro. Well, I just got buffalo chicken dip. Baker.
Bruh. Lord. As everyone laughs at the way I read your tweet, I can't even do it with a straight face. It's been too long since we've done this. Ryan Clark is the best. Follow on Twitter, and here we go explaining his tweets from the weekend, and it starts with this. Welp. A.J. Brown was part of the swollest wide receiver duo in college history, and now with Julio joining to form Voltron in Tennessee, the beat goes on. Healthy, hungry Hall of Fame Julio pulls up in Nashville, and defenses finna have a problem. Henry, Brown, Jones, physical freakiness overload. RC, explain that tweet.
Hey, man, as you were reading that, man, Rick James is playing in my head, super freak, but not in the way that Rick meant it, in a whole different way, in the way where we're going to argue about who's going to get off the bus first, and they're just going to get an extra big door and let Julio and Derrick and AJ walk off all together in suede pants with no shirts on, because these dudes are going to be physical. They're going to get the ball, run after the catch on the outside, and you still have to stop Derrick Henry. The Tennessee Titans have built Voltron on offense, and this is going to give Ryan Tannehill an opportunity to be the MVP of the league.
See, that's the beauty of RC's tweets. They are both entertaining and insightful. Sometimes they raise interesting questions like this. With the rookie pay scale being what it is in today's NFL, how far into a rookie contract should teams wait to decide whether their young QB is the dude? RC, explain the tweet.
Well, listen, look at some of these young quarterbacks we've had, right? If you think about the Chicago Bears and Mitchell Trubisky, they probably waited a year too long. Sam Darnold is out at the New York Jets. We're already hearing that Tua Tagovailoa has to prove this year that he's the guy. So how long do we wait? right? We know Josh Allen is the dude right now. You know that Justin Herbert is the dude right now because he started out early in his rookie season. But there's so many different times when you're trying to figure out, can this guy be our franchise quarterback? And if I'm a head coach, how long am I willing to wait? We're seeing now more than ever, it's getting shorter and shorter that these guys have an opportunity to prove themselves. So young quarterbacks, you better get it, and you better get it fast.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thought. And that brings us to one of those young quarterbacks, Josh Allen, of course, who had a tremendous season. Ryan tweeting, any quarterback taking the Josh Allen jump this year. RC, explain the tweet.
Like, look at Josh Allen, right? We looked at Josh Allen when he came into the league, a strong arm, athletic guy, had some accuracy issues. And even in his second year, he was good, but he wasn't great. And he certainly didn't seem to be on the trajectory he ended up being in last year. But now that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing that guys can make a jump. Guys can hit a splash. Well, who's that dude this year? Which one of these young quarterbacks that we're waiting on? And hell, it could be an old quarterback like Matt Stafford. What dude says, you know what, I've been good forever, I've had this talent, or I've always been able to do it, and this year, watch me do it big. That's the quarterback I'm looking for, and that quarterback makes a jump in the MVP race, but I think his team makes a jump to the playoffs.
Okay, and so that makes it worth asking everyone what they think. It's the second time in a week, RC, you tweeted a question, and we just turned it into a segment because we like to hear. So I will start with you, since it was your idea.
The power of RC.
Who would you pick? Which quarterback do you think makes that jump in 21? Ryan?
You know what? I'm going to go with Kyler Murray. And I was huge on Kyler Murray early on last season. He kind of got banged up. The wheels were down. And you saw that once his athleticism was gone, he didn't really work the ball down the field like he wanted it to. I know they had A.J. Green on the outside, but it's going to be about D-Hop. It's going to be about what Christian Kirk can do. It's also going to be about Cliff Kingsbury. How do you scheme up on-time plays for Kyler Murray to get the ball out of his hands where it doesn't matter how athletic he is and what his legs can do? If you get those things from Cliff Kingsbury, I think we see Kyler Murray in some of these MVP conversations.
I like it. Teddy, who do you like?
Let's go with Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. I like to see if these young quarterbacks have the right mentality to be successful in to win championships and how they fix their mistakes. I mean, speaking of mentality, not only is he run over linebackers on the sideline, but by the way, you get your first start or you hit the field when the starter gets a punctured lung right before the game and just go out there, kid.
Man.
And then he still balls out. He's learned from his mistakes, not so much an error repeater. This is a guy right here. He can take that jump RC is talking about, I think. Just watch him get better and better over the course of the year.
All right, I like that one too. Dominique, how about you?
I got nobody. Like, I'm confused at what you guys are talking about. This Josh Allen league. Like, Josh Allen is, Ryan, you talked about super freaks. Josh Allen was a super freak in a bad way. He was the kind that you don't take home to mother for the first 2 seasons of his career where he was putting up QBRs of 40. Like, that was gross. That was like bottom 3 in the league stuff. And then this year he has a QBR in the 80s, which nobody else did that except for Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. So, no, nobody is making the Josh Allen leap because we're not even sure if Josh Allen can continue that type of leap. To go from worst in the league to top in the league, and y'all talking about that he'll never let your spirits down once you get him off the street.
I was going to say he'll never let your spirits down.
Nick is measuring leaps. We're measuring leaps now. Different leaps.
I'm measuring leaps. You can't call it a Josh Allen leap because Herbert was good last year. Kyler Murray was good last year. They're not going to go from adding 40 points to their QBR. That I don't even know if that's possible. That puts you outside of the range of mathematics.
Dominic, you know what you just did? You just sampled the question and turned it into "you can't touch this," which is what MC Hammer did with that song many years ago.
Well done, Mike.
In the meantime, I'm going to take Sam Darnold because things can't possibly be worse for Sam Darnold. He goes from being in the worst situation any young quarterback could possibly be in to what I think is inarguably a better one and maybe even a good one. And if he is the talented player that I believe he is, and a lot of people in the NFL believe he is, I think he could take a major jump from from being looking as bad as any quarterback in the entire NFL to looking a whole lot better.
Not a Josh Allen jump, though.
Those are our picks. That could be a Josh, at least in distance, it could be a Josh Allen jump, even if he doesn't become a top 5 player. Okay, let me run the floor. I got NBA stuff, and I got Malika ready to go here. We run the floor with yesterday's action. Game 7, we open the hour with this. Mavs Clippers. Luka Doncic was spectacular. 46 points, 14 assists, but not enough. Kawhi Leonard, an assist shy of a triple-double. LA pulled away at the end to win 126-111, so they will play the Jazz. That series starts tomorrow night. In Philly, Trae Young had 35 points. Hawks held on to beat the Sixers by 4 in Game 1 of that series. Atlanta nearly blowing a 25-point third-quarter lead. Joel Embiid played with a torn meniscus, had 39 for the Sixers, so he looked great. Meanwhile, speaking of playing without, James Harden will miss tonight's Game 2 against Milwaukee with what is described as right hamstring tightness. He got hurt in the first minute of the Nets' victory on Saturday night. Remember, he missed over a month with a hamstring strain during the regular season. And no one knows this team better than our Malika Andrews, who gets up with us early here this morning. Malika, thanks. What is the expectation internally for the Nets as far as what they can expect to get from Harden in this series?
Well, good morning, Greeny. That remains to be seen, right? So what the expectation is over the next couple of days, they're going to continue to monitor James Harden's hamstring. You mentioned that, remember, he missed over a month in the regular season, 18 games with a right hamstring strain. But before that, Greeny, he missed 2 games with right hamstring, you guessed it, tightness. So then he came back, he played just 5 minutes against the New York Knicks, and that's when he strained that hamstring. So they're going to be very cautious with him here. Steve Nash did say yesterday, now is the time to take risks. It is the playoffs. We need our best players out there, but they also need to be balancing protecting James Harden from himself. This is a guy who wants to be out there, prepared to be out there, wants to be with his team, so it's going to be a little bit of a balance. They want him to play, but they need to see how his hamstring responds first.
It's obviously the biggest question here. I asked Tim Legler at the start of the hour, if they don't get anything from Harden, will they still win the series? And he said yes, but it becomes sort of an equal matchup. What are you hearing from inside about how they will overcome whatever it is they don't get from him?
Well, it's going to need to be the other guys, right, Greeny? And let's be very clear. James Harden is not a replaceable player, but let's look back at the blueprint of what it took to win Game 1. They needed Blake Griffin to have his first playoff double-double since 2016 when he was with the Clippers. Mike James, Steve Nash readily said after the game, we didn't go into this matchup thinking Mike James was going to play over 30 minutes and have the impact he did. Joe Harris had 5 3-pointers and the Bucks had just 6 as a team, right? So that's the kind of performance they're going to need from other scorers in order to come out on top in this series. And they're also defensively looking to really buckle down. They like the way they play there in Game 1. They're going to need to build on that in Game 2 because the expectation is the Bucks are not going to have the same kind of poor shooting night, Greeny.
Outstanding, as always. Malika Andrews, will look for your coverage tonight. Game 2. Huge NFL story from the weekend. Diana Rossini reporting that the Falcons were on the verge of trading Julio Jones to the Titans, and then indeed they did, receiving a 2022 second-round pick and a 2023 fourth-rounder were the Falcons, and Julio Jones goes to Tennessee. And what do we think that meant? Well, after the trade for Julio, Tennessee jumps to 15-1 to win the AFC, tied for the 7th shortest odds in the conference, so they are still behind the likes of Kansas City, Baltimore. Being told that we have new video of Julio Jones that has just come in, and there it is. That is Julio Jones traveling in style to Tennessee, so he has arrived, and we'll get to work. Julio Jones, again, an all-time great, the age of 32, now arriving in Tennessee, where he will form a very formidable 1-2 punch at receiver with A.J. Brown, and they've got Derrick Henry, and they've got Ryan Tannehill, and they were already good, so this could be very interesting. So it begs the question, and Teddy Bruschi, we'll start with you. We all acknowledge Kansas City's the team to beat in the AFC. As of right this minute,
Yes.
Teddy, who's the biggest threat to them?
Guys, I'm going to say the Tennessee Titans, and here's why. Because they're not going to attempt to outscore the Chiefs like everybody else would, bringing all of these offensive weapons. What the Titans will try to do is slow the game down and beat them up, bloody their noses, all right? They'll be the greasers, or the Chiefs will be the socias, like in the movie The Outsiders, and it's just about grinding. That's all it's going to be about. And that's how you beat them. You don't try to outscore Patrick Mahomes. You don't try to put your receivers versus Tyreek Hill and see if you can score 40. You just beat them up, slow the game down, take possessions away so your defense can rest. I think that's how the Chiefs are beat, and I think the Titans can do that.
The reference I didn't see coming, but I like it. Dominique, what's the team to beat? Or who is the biggest threat to KC, in the AFC?
Yeah, I like what Teddy's saying, but I would go the opposite way. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills because we've seen the Ravens try that strategy, and we've seen the Ravens get smashed every time they played against the Chiefs. So I think one of the few teams, assuming the super freak that is Josh Allen, can continue to put up numbers that like he's put up, I think that they might have the chance to be able to score with the Chiefs and get some late game big plays and win in that situation. But it's going to be hard either way.
Okay, RC is next. Who's the biggest threat? Biggest threat to Kansas City, the AFC. Ryan, go.
Listen, I still think it's the Cleveland Browns. Like, this doesn't change it for me in Tennessee. Tennessee's not showing up with Pony Boy Curtis, or they're not showing up with Soda Pop. These are going to be the Soda Pop Curtis or Pony Boy. They're going to be like different when you look at what the Cleveland Browns can do. The Cleveland Browns have now added to their defense. You go out, you get Jones, you get Troy Hill, you draft Newsome in the first round. Owusu Kamara falls to you in the second round, and you already added Jadeveon Clowney to an offense that found its niche last year under Kevin Stefanski. So to me, when you look at the rosters, when you look at the team that stood on Kansas City's field and competed with Patrick Mahomes for 2.5 quarters, that's a team that believes they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have the roster to do it.
Maybe they could do it for
Stay
Johnny.
gold, RC. Stay
Do
gold,
it for
RC.
Johnny. Jeff Darlington, who's the biggest threat?
By the way, Ryan's pop culture recall is just unbelievable, out of this world. But
It is.
Look, I'm going to say it's the Bills. I really do believe the Titans may be 2A, 2B here behind the Chiefs. But I'm going to say the Bills just because of the way that they have constructed this roster methodically over the past several years. They are primed to strike. They are ready to make that championship run. Can they compete with the Chiefs? I have no idea. But I do feel like they're maybe a year ahead of where the Titans want to be in terms of planning. I'll go with the Bills, but I absolutely do love what the Titans are doing.
When it's all said and done, though, RC, will the Chiefs stay golden? Meaning, are they still the team to beat in the AFC?
Yeah.
You didn't hear the question?
It was a question, but it's okay. I was really just trying to demonstrate that I, too, know the plot of that movie and that book. Go ahead, RC.
I didn't know who you said do it. Who answered?
It almost didn't matter. I was just trying to demonstrate that I myself can also contribute from a pop culture standpoint to this discussion so frequently. It's so infrequent that I was just delighted to jump in on that one.
Your hammer reference. Your hammer reference from last segment. That's the last for the whole week.
That was good.
It's fantastic.
Yes, I'll be dining out on that one for quite some time. In the meantime, who watched last night's event? This was the big pop culture event of the weekend of the week, and maybe of beyond that. YouTube star turned prize fighter Logan Paul went the distance with Floyd Mayweather. They fought 8 rounds. On Sunday night, it was an entertaining exhibition. No winner was officially declared. We did actually keep score at ESPN, and we scored about 78-74 in favor of Mayweather. But look, I never let something like this happen without taking advantage of the opportunity. Clearly, people want to see random people get into a ring and fight each other. So I thought I would ask the crew today, give me some people who you'd like to see fight. Teddy Bruschi, I'll start with you. Who would you like to see fight in an exhibition?
What's the equivalent of fighting, throwing a punch on the football field? It's a stiff arm. So throw Derrick Henry in there, and I'll put Aaron Donald against him. That's the type of fight I want to see right there.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron Donald against Derrick Henry. Who would win that fight? Who do you think, Teddy?
Listen,
I lean to Aaron Donald. I'm going Aaron Donald because he's like the Hulk out there, man. He's going to take care of that stiff arm some way or the other.
Anybody look in the other direction? I mean, the stiff arm obviously would be a lethal move in the squared circle if they were to do it. All right, I see you're shaking your head.
Aaron Donald,
what fight do you want to see?
Aaron Donald don't look scared of nothing. You know what fight I want to see? And I know people may disagree with this. I want to see Kirk Cousins and Jimmy Garoppolo. You know why? Because these are people that we think are like super sweet and super nice. And Kirk Cousins was in like some sort of choir in high school and led all these plays. Jimmy G. Well, we know how Jimmy G dates, but I think that these two dudes would get absolutely gutter in the ring. I think it would be win at all costs, biting ears, pulling down pants, doing whatever you have to do to leave victorious. Because the one thing neither of them would want on the way out is for people to say, see, I knew they were soft. So I think that would be a knockdown, drag-out fight to the finish. Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins, set it up on the Logan Paul, Dominique Foxworth card in October. Let's get it going.
Oh, I'm good. I can't fight. I'm Greeny and I already discussed that we're gonna have a chess match as the opening to that card. We're gonna start it out moving rooks around. That's our move.
Yes, I was thrown off the chess team for being too unathletic. Jeff Darlington, let me come to you. If we're going to put you on the undercard in here, who are you willing to fight?
You know, I was in New York
pre-COVID,
and Hembo came up to me one time in the studio and he said, hey, who do you think would win a fight between you and Field Yates? And for some reason I was like offended. Like, obviously I would win that fight. And then I remembered I am Jeff Darlington. I don't win fights. But I do feel like while Field actually does have like some popcorn muscles going, I would be much more willing to cheat and scrap and bite and do things that he likely would not. But look at the neck on Field Yates. I think that would make a great undercard for the Jimmy Garoppolo-Kirk Cousins fight. Certainly the least watched fight in American history.
Oh, my goodness. That would really be something else. Field Yates and Jeff Darlington. We are not taking odds on that under any circumstances. Guys, awesome fun this morning. Thanks, everybody.